Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, here from the Pillar Exterior stage. DB, what's going on?
Hi.
You doing all right?
Yeah.
Not so good?
We're cool. We're cool.
You look a little gloomy on this gloomy Monday.
Yeah, it's a lot going on.
Yeah?
Yeah. My niece is headed to Boston. She's in air right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's tough.
Yep. But, I did not. It was a very quiet weekend. I did not.
That's
outside of running to like the store.
Yeah.
Didn't do much.
That's good. Little R&R time.
Wasn't so much. Yeah, sure. I mean, it could be a lot worse.
Sure.
Right? Like
Yeah.
I wasn't it's just interesting with no summer basketball.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like life has come to a screeching halt.
Is Micah not playing?
He is not.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's on a mission. He's a different kind of kid. Spent a lot of time going over to like 118, or he'll walk over to Westview if he's with his mom and
get some work in.
Oh yeah, you don't have to worry about that.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah, he doesn't sit still. So it was such a busy sports weekend.
Yeah,
that
a lot going on.
Yeah, didn't watch anything great. I was gonna start a movie.
Okay.
Damaged was Samuel L. Jackson, but then
haven't seen that one.
It's brand spanking new, and I didn't go with that. But neither of the teams that I thought could come back from a 3-2 deficit came back. So, for Bruin Steve's sake, his coach gets to keep his job another year in Boston.
Well, at least another week.
Watched some really bad offense in the second. I guess you're going to say the Cavs had good defense yesterday.
No,
it was early.
I didn't. Yeah, it was the noon, right? Yeah. No, I thought Orlando kind of disintegrated a little bit.
Well, they can't shoot.
I thought that was as much on Orlando as it was as it was on Cleveland.
So I mean,
and I like some of Cleveland's pieces, but
I watched boxing and UFC Saturday night. I didn't go to bed until we're probably talking 2:30.
I mean, that's not unusual though.
Gosh, I do have to get better, but I'm so gosh darn stressed. It's just like I could not. It just was a lot of television, man.
There was a lot. I mean, we didn't bring up the Derby yet.
So were you at home
watching the Derby?
Yeah,
I was watching at home.
I almost was gonna see if you were gonna come by. And I was like, it's kind of clear across town. I had extra food.
It's not bad. I mean, so I just hop on the interstate because I'm right on 680 there. So it's really easy to get to like here or to your house or whatever. It's really not bad.
Yeah. So that was like, I took that down to the wire. And then I was
What'd you make for the Derby? Or was it Derby food, or was
it was just a beef loin. It's just a tenderloin.
Yeah.
And I took a lot of care and concern with it.
Yeah.
And I thought Jay's parents were gonna eat, and then they did not. So I had
some extras.
Plenty.
Yeah. I mean, if you make those burn ends again, I better get a call.
Yeah. So I think I missed the deal on those Packers, those tip and the point, or the flat and the point.
Those things were monsters.
I'll wait for my buddy Corey to tell me when Restaurant Depot has them again.
Those things were insane. No, I was free on Saturday. I was just chilling at my house because the wife had Berkshire this weekend.
Oh yeah, she's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, so they had. I mean, you should have seen the schedule. It was just event after event because you got all these different groups in for Berkshire at the hotel having events there and whatever. So she had her biggest one's like a 2,000 person breakfast. That was yesterday morning.
Ooh, what do you serve at a 2,000 person breakfast?
I don't even know. It's basically every venue in the hotel is packed.
But breakfast would be hard to get right, in my opinion, because
anything's hard to get right at that scale.
Yeah, 2,000, a lot of fancy people.
Yeah, anything's hard. I mean,
how you getting eggs right?
I don't. Good luck. You have to be better at it than I am, which is not a high bar, but Yeah, so I watched the Derby at home, and then she basically had to sleep off most of because she did the breakfast yesterday, and then she came home, so she had to sleep it off basically the rest of the day because it was basically an 18-hour day followed by a 4 a.m. wake up call.
I talked to my mom about 4 on Saturday,
Yeah,
and she
how'd you feel
was
about the horses?
she felt good going in.
Mm-hmm.
She was kicking herself. What did the text say? She's kicking herself at the end.
Because our favorite didn't place again.
Yeah, wow, isn't that trend is something else?
Yeah, it's I think Fearson ended up 5th. I think
Yeah.
not great.
Gosh, I can't remember where she said it. She changed one of there it is. She changed one of the numbers last minute, and she used exclamation points, so I definitely believe her. She said, "I'm kicking myself. I had 238, and I had 11-2-3, and changed it. I could have had blank with 2 sad emojis."
Mm,
Yeah.
that is always disappointing when you second guess yourself and you get it wrong.
Yeah, so I was trying to figure out why she made catfish fillets, but she'd just gotten them from Costco and they were fresh, so I'm sure she wanted to get those bad boys in.
Yeah, you guys do like family dinner last night?
Mm-mm.
No,
Chilled. I was very, very.
I'm not like a catfish fillet guy.
So full disclosure,
Yeah,
I would try it. I have some fillets, but I don't historically love catfish.
I don't either.
I-
It's not.
But I will try it because I've learned to do, and I can't do it right now. So when I get back to it, but I have learned to do wet batter.
Oh, okay.
I'm definitely not. Sorry for all of my folks in the South. I apologize. I'm not a cornmeal guy. I'm traditional flour,
that's blasphemy. I think a little bit.
or I'll do a wet batter because I always have club soda on hand.
Yeah,
I just prefer. I see.
not a cornmeal guy.
No, I can't. I can't stand to.
Can't do it.
I just don't like the way that breading looks.
Oh, it's like the aesthetics of it.
It just
As much as anything?
And I don't like you're gonna you could cook it out. I don't like corn either. I don't like corn in much of anything. I don't care corn insert blank.
So you're not a cornbread guy either.
Fudge no. I mean that is awful. Awful.
Come on now, you don't
No.
like cornbread?
No. I mean, I don't even like the way it smells.
Look at you, just busting stereotypes all over the place.
I know, right? I followed this guy on TikTok. I think he's Southern Cajun or something. He's like, "What we cooked today?" And he's kind of like,
Is he that guy I can't stand?
"No,
Or is that a different
that's
guy?
Southern vibes."
Oh, okay.
Oh my lord!
Excuse me, I get all your Southern cooking video creators confused.
And he has a line that he uses every time he serves cornbread because he's a big cornbread guy.
Yeah.
Cast iron skillet. And so he's funny though. I'd turn you on to him. And guess something's shaking up my logarithms now. Is that algorithms?
Algorithm. Logarithm is a thing, but it's a different
algorithms. My algorithm has been shaken because now I'm getting top lists. Like, and it's not the top 5 guys, but I've been getting a lot of like, top 16 NFL teams, top blank of this, top this of that, top winners of the draft. I don't know what I clicked on, but
you probably watch too much draft content.
Draft?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said giraffe. I did watch.
Not like
no, I did watch I Was Prey early on the weekend, and I finally saw somebody get attacked by something different, and it was a giraffe. It's getting a lot of sharks, a lot of bears. Guy filmed himself in Montana getting smoked by a grizzly.
That's a choice. Not a good one, but that's a choice.
All I could think of was the Revenant, and I was like, how? How? And they're so graphic. I think they tell them, hey, I need as much detail as possible on this sit down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I could hear it felt like the bones in my skull were crunching. I was like, yeah, it's a little much.
you don't need all that?
Yeah, it's a little much. I mean, it was, and both my shark attack victims lost a limb.
That's tough.
Yeah. And then
bad luck for your guys, the Sharks.
Yeah, and then Tillamook, the killer whale, came up on
like the cheese.
No,
Isn't
but
that a cheese?
it is, and it's really slept on.
Yeah, it's like a real good cheese.
Tremendous
Yeah.
call on Tillamook.
Yeah.
You know who turned me on to that?
Who?
This is weird, but DJ Rezak.
Really?
Yeah, he had it on a couple of trips, and I never bought it. Like you can get it at like Fairway and
Yeah, you can get a lot of places.
Costco, and I thought it was like kind of a knockoff, but it's not. It is.
No,
it is legit.
Yeah, it's like I would compare it to like a microbrew in a beer. It's a smaller like production, but I think it's from Wisconsin.
Mm.
Pretty solid. Yeah, my ex-wife introduced me to it because she's from up there, obviously. But yeah, Tillamook's real good.
Yeah, it is actually.
Mess with the Tillamook. This is the stuff I get from Costco. Tillamook. And I get that. What's the butter? The
So there's
Irish Gold. Or
yeah,
whatever it's
there's
called.
two Kerrygold.
Kerrygold.
There's
yeah,
another. I get the other one.
Yeah.
The 99.9%.
Yeah.
It's right next to it. I mean, and I save like $5.
I mess that.
One's $14.99, one's
I
$9.99.
mess with that Kerrygold stuff.
Yeah, I keep that in. Well, I cook in it so
Yeah.
much now.
That stuff's incredible.
Yeah, I hit the tenderloin with the tallow too. I'll show it to you.
Oof. Making me a little upset. I didn't get an invite now.
Wasn't. Oh, my man's already on boxing. I forgot it was on. It's all right. It's overseas. Don't worry about that. Man,
it is kind of funny when you follow boxing people on Twitter that you'll see stuff and you're like, I didn't even know there was a fight going on right now.
Yeah.
It's like super weird hours of the night because they're in Saudi Arabia or wherever.
I don't know if I was encouraged or discouraged. I wanted to see Munguia put up I actually wanted to see Alvarez lose.
Yeah, you're not a big Alvarez guy.
At all.
Yeah.
At all.
It's been a tough couple years for you.
I know, right? bring back Bivol. It's one guy that beat him.
It's been a tough couple years for you.
Yeah, so we get the good series tonight, starting with the NHL. Shane, who you got? You taking Bruins or Panthers?
I wanted it to be the Maple Leafs because I thought they were a better team, but I guess the Bruins. The Bruins are more complete.
I tell you what, man, that's just a battle. That's a franchise that's used to winning versus a franchise that isn't.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely.
That's
definitely in the last 20 years.
Boston has scoreboard.
Yeah,
you knew that when that thing got close down the stretch, you're like,
oh yeah,
Toronto ain't winning this.
Some things start to pucker a bit.
Yeah,
there.
it's uncanny.
Well,
and it's amazing how that went to overtime, and it's going to change the futures of so many. Boston's head coach, probably keeps his job.
Yeah,
and Toronto was a win away from probably not breaking up that outfit, but now they got to break up that outfit.
Yeah, and it's man, I was watching overtime.
Getting ready to be like the Philadelphia Eagles.
It felt immediately like Boston was going to win that thing. As soon as over, you're just like, oh no, this is going to be a wrap, and it happened pretty quickly.
And I was surprised yesterday. Were you surprised yesterday by the Rangers jumping all over Carolina? I thought the time off may bug New York.
Yeah, you would have thought that it would, but I mean, they're a good team. We've been talking about that for like the last 2 weeks. I mean, those guys can skate. They're quick. They can get up and down the ice. I mean,
you blink. That's kind of what I've been. You blink, and they'll put 2-3 on you.
Yeah, game over.
Your Dallas Stars pulled out of Game 7.
Yeah, I was not wanting that. I really. I don't enjoy watching Dallas.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of
just stylistically.
They're not ultra explosive. They are deep.
Mm-hmm.
But you may hit the snooze button watching the Stars. They probably got about 8 ways they can get you.
Is it weird that as I think as it's an older thing. As I get older, I care more about how it looks.
Yeah, so that I'm with you.
Like when I was a kid, when I was younger, I was very results oriented.
I feel bad sometimes explaining to people why I don't like certain things, and a lot of times it doesn't fit my eye.
Yeah, that's how I feel about LeBron. His game has never really fit my eye. Like I'm not saying he's not good. Like obviously he's great, but
I'm so sick of those guys.
I've never watched him and be like, oh, that's beautiful basketball.
It happens to me in football too much too. Where
you do it with runners a lot.
Yeah,
like
I do.
You have a very specific running style that you like,
and some pitchers I gravitate towards just because I like the
way it looks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, I totally and yeah, like when I was younger, I used to be super results oriented. If they got wins,
did they win?
Yeah, did they win? Did they lose? Whatever. Like what was the score? What was all that? And now, and I don't know if like the 73 win Warriors broke my brain or what, but I enjoyed watching that team so much that it's like, yeah, I was bummed that they lost the title. That would have been way cooler had they won it. But I'm not like, it doesn't take away from how much I enjoyed watching that team play, right? Like it obviously you want to finish the job, but I enjoyed watching that team play so much. Like the Creighton team that made the Elite Eight 2 years ago, right? That team has the best accolades in Creighton history, but the 1920 team that got canceled because of COVID, I enjoyed watching that team way more.
Mm-hmm.
Just aesthetically, it was a beautiful team to watch.
Yeah, it's funny. I think knowing you a little bit, you lose a little sleep over that year, don't you?
Well, Zagorowski got hurt, so not that much. Like if Zagorowski hadn't,
that's what I'm saying.
No, but I mean,
like what they were capable of.
If Zagorowski hadn't gotten hurt, because I think most people lose sleep over it because of COVID. I'm actually a little like knowing that Zagorowski was hurt. I'm a little grateful I didn't have to watch that team lose in the NCAA tournament.
I think it's
because that would have broke my heart.
It's amazing how quickly he's forgotten about for how good he was.
He was incredible.
You see these lists that come out for Creighton and teams and play. Sometimes
he was incredible.
Yeah,
he was so good, and
competitive son of a gun.
That's he had that a little bit of nasty in him. That is the most. I still think that's the best Creighton team I've ever watched. The end of that season, that team could have beat anybody in the country. I fully believe that.
So, is it kind of like the Raiders in 2001, where that team was for me? It was a lot of fun to watch that team, and they had great players. I mean, you had Jerry Rice on that team, you had Gannon on that team, Tim. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, and it was just fun to watch that team. And then
they had an old team hanging on by a thread,
and then they got to the end, and they just couldn't go all the way against the Bucks there. But it did take time. It took a lot of time for that to heal. So
Gannon, I think that was 02.
If I remember right, Gannon put up prolific numbers.
He did
too.
Yeah. He was on my the 1 year I played fantasy football.
Might have been.
I think that was the Rich Gannon MVP year.
I listen to this podcast sometimes. I stopped probably a couple months ago. He is very, very critical.
Is he?
Oh yeah, he's tough. Like he doesn't like anything.
Do you know
the way to San Jose? I do not. Did you know that
where he went to college?
Old enough to know better. Gannon is Delaware.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, he's a weird one.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I was watching
I'm pretty good at that.
I am too, but I was watching one last night, and I knew it was I was watching one of those lists on TikTok, ironically enough, and I knew it was one of the ones I missed because I knew it was a weird one, and I couldn't figure it out.
Was it Gannon?
Yeah.
Give me another one.
Boomer Esiason.
Come on, Maryland.
Yeah, that's the other one I missed. It was just like that's a little before my time.
I like that stuff.
JP Losman.
Tulane.
Yep. That was the impossible one. I got that one. The two I missed were Gannon and Boomer. I was mad about Boomer. I should have got Boomer.
All right, give me one more.
Oh, I'm trying to
got one in you?
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Chad Pennington. You'll get that one.
Oh, Marshall.
Yeah.
I did not think that they were that good.
Marshall.
And it's weird
because you had Pennington and Leftwich back to back.
And you get the Moss Gallup, but they always show the same two highlights of Moss from Marshall, and I know he was better than that.
Oh, his numbers,
right? The slip screen and him housing it like 90, but I know he was better than that.
I think they just didn't have TV of Marshall.
They did though, because I can see Leftwich the year after getting helped by his teammates.
Yeah, but that was in the bowl game.
Oh, fudge.
The bowl game was tough. I think you're overestimating how many. I think
people were covering Marshall.
Yeah, how much TV coverage there was of Marshall in 1998.
I mean, maybe.
I think Byron was a couple years after.
You think I am?
I think you really are. I think you are forgetting, because they were still FCS at the time.
Yeah.
I think you're overestimating how much FCS television coverage there was in the late 90s.
Yeah, I get the same.
Because by the time Byron was there, they were FBS. They were a bowl team.
I get the same, Randy Moss Marshall highlights. I'm like, I know he had more than 3 catches.
No, he did, because his numbers are absolutely stupid from that time.
Yeah.
They're bonkers. So there's about a 5-year gap there between Leftwich and Moss. So I think there's a little bit of
Yeah, I'm over it.
You're over Marshall?
Yeah. Do you like the way that, speaking of aesthetics and liking the way they play, I wanted another quarterback. I like this game.
Well, I mean, the one they gave out, one of them they gave out that they thought was hard was Kurt Warner, but everybody around here knows that one.
Yeah, Northern Iowa.
Yeah.
Do you like watching Minnesota, the Timberwolves?
More than I thought I would, but
See,
not a lot.
I do not.
Not a lot.
I do not.
So the reason I say more,
But they're really good.
The reason I say more than I thought I would was because I was super critical of the Cat Rudy Gobert dynamic when they made that trade.
How about Rudy just impacting games without even touching the rock?
And it's gone after it was horrible last year. This year they figured it out to a way that's why I say better than I thought, because I never thought it would even look functional. And it does look functional now. That's not the style that I would particularly gravitate towards. I will say, I know that they weren't playing that well in the playoffs, but the Mavericks did start playing a style that I thought was pretty aesthetically pleasing towards the end of the last third of the regular season.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that translates to anything, but it fit my eye a lot better. But no, Minnesota's not a team where I'd be like, oh, they play really beautiful basketball. But the fact that it's even functional is shocking to me.
I was surprised at how many people were upset with the way that Nebraska was playing last year when they were winning, and I was like,
in basketball,
football.
Okay.
I was like,
hey, W's.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on where you are
in development.
In your development.
Totally fair.
When you're not winning, you'll take them any way you can get.
Yeah, I don't think you get to have a lot of, what's the old saying? You win ugly, or you lose ugly, then you lose close, then you win ugly, then you win big or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're in Nebraska. We're firmly in the win ugly stage right now. You take it however you can get it. That's not to say
just win, baby.
Down the line, I wouldn't like it to look a little nicer. I actually made a comment to one of my buddies yesterday or a couple days ago that I'll share with you in a minute here. That's right in line with what we're talking about with aesthetics and getting W's. That's DB. I'm Ravi. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. And we were talking about aesthetically pleasing sports. And, I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine who had moved away a couple years ago. But he's got some people in his life that are the more extreme version of Nebraska fans. And so we were having this conversation because he listened to our Matt Rule interview last week.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, I think I really like this guy. Full disclosure, he lives in North Carolina. So his initial thoughts on Rule
were not positive.
Not great.
Mm-hmm.
Because all he heard was what people in Carolina thought about Rule. And I was like,
you should hear what Rule thinks about people in Carolina.
And I was like, no, you got to listen to him a little bit more. Like, he's the real deal. I think, I think he probably didn't he'd probably like that one back in terms of how he operated. And B, I don't know that NFL is the right fit for him. I think he's really suited for the college game.
Or you could just look at Carolina's success post Fox.
Yeah, no, it's a dumpster fire. And it looks like Tepper in particular is not really suited for the current, amount of power.
Although if they blow this stretch,
mm-hmm.
It's totally on management, because that roster is quietly getting.
It's not nearly as bad as their
quietly getting better
would indicate, right? And so I was like, no, man, you got to listen to him. He's a lot different than the perception of him in the NFL circles are. And so I'm talking to him about what people's expectations are for Nebraska. And he's got, and I don't think there's that many of them still. But he's kind of given that old adage about how, Nebraska fans are unrealistic about expectations and things like that. And I was like, first of all, we talked about this a little bit last week. I think making the college football playoff is firmly within grasp. That's not making a top 12 is not that hard, right? I get Nebraska's compared to making a top 4.
Well, sure.
Now, I get it's a long way from where Nebraska is right now.
I would feel, we probably should just, if you want me to get that context, that perspective, probably should just start with playing something meaningful in the postseason.
Totally fair.
Right? It's easier for me because I'm not going to fast forward in my mind. Well, 12 is a lot easier than 4.
So
Like,
let's
I
take it
can't-
out of the
I
Nebraska context.
Yeah,
for a
I was going
second.
to say, because I can't even get to a bowl game.
No, yeah. So let's
You know
take it
what I
out
mean?
of the Nebraska context for a second.
Okay.
In general, for teams that are playing big boy, power 2, whatever football that you want to call it,
I still think it's 3, but it's okay.
whatever you want to call it, right? The majors in college football. For those teams, if you are committed to winning, making 12 should be a reasonable goal for just about everybody that considers themselves a major player in college football. Now, Nebraska is a very far way away from that right now. I get that. But if you look at all the other schools that commit the resources, the time and attention, like that commits everything Nebraska does to college football, nobody would look at any of those other programs and say, hey, top 12 is not realistic for you.
Yeah,
right?
how many of those are there? 25 of them?
Not a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's a handful. And for every single one of them, we would look at and say, yeah, top 12 on a pretty regular basis is a reasonable goal for your program. So I don't know why we don't do that for Nebraska, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But you know why, though? You know why I think it is?
Why?
Because I think you'd have to start to say out loud or continue to say out loud how bad the program has been.
Yeah.
And because you have to say some things out loud.
100%.
Right? There's no talking sellout streak. There's no talking eyeballs. There's no talking brand. There's just haven't won enough.
Just, hey, haven't been good enough.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, I don't know if
you think we can have those discussions without saying, yeah, but?
I think that's totally fair. It simply hasn't been good enough.
Yeah.
Now, I think the reason people gravitate towards a lot of those things, and I don't know if it's a Nebraska nice thing or what, it seems like they just don't want to say out loud, hey, these guys didn't do the job good enough. And I'm not just talking about Frost. I'm talking about everybody, right? Everybody since Nebraska's been relevant hasn't done the job good enough. And that's like, Bo got us believing that it was impossible to recruit here. Guess what? It's not. Because the guy that was literally right before him was bringing in top 5 classes. Okay, so I know it's not impossible.
It wasn't pretty.
Not to mention the type of players that...
I mean, even Riley recruited.
Yeah, Riley recruited really well. I think he had a top 15 class in there as well. And would have had another one if he didn't get fired. Like that class that was building for his third year was going to be really good. Now, if those guys turn out or whatever, I don't know. But Bo got us believing that it was impossible to recruit here, and it's not. And that, I felt like, kind of led us down this path of, oh, this is a really hard job. And so we started making excuses for the guys that we liked, whether it was Bo.
Okay.
Not that everybody was in love with Riley, but especially with Frost, where people really wanted it to work out. And we go, oh, man, this is just a really hard job. And so we keep making excuses for these people. Guess what? It's not a harder job than Kansas. Promise you that. I would venture to guess it's not a harder job than Iowa.
It's not a harder job than K-State.
Definitely not a harder job than K-State. So I go down these teams that have been more successful. And like, listen, is it a harder job than, Georgia? Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Or it's hard in different ways. I don't know if it's harder or not as hard or whatever. It's hard in different ways. But I guarantee it's not as hard as winning at Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa State, a lot of these programs that have been more successful than Nebraska.
Is it harder to win at Nebraska than, like, let's say, Oklahoma State?
No. I think Oklahoma State's an incredibly hard job because you've got a giant in your backyard. You've got Texas coming up all the time to try and steal your players. You've got Kansas, Nebraska, everybody surrounding you is trying to steal your players. And then anybody that's really, really good, probably going to go to Oklahoma instead of you anyway, if they want to stay home. Oklahoma State's an incredibly hard job. Same with a lot of the jobs in Texas that aren't, I think Texas is a really hard job for other reasons, but a lot of the jobs in Texas that aren't Texas, I think are really hard jobs for similar reasons.
It seems like with Gundy's win percentage, Okie State should be harder to win than that.
I think it is. I just think he's a really good football coach. I historically, it has been harder to win than that at Oklahoma State, right? Like he's done an incredible job over the course of almost 20 years now. And I don't know that you can look at any of those jobs like that and say, oh, that's an easier job than Nebraska. Or that's not a harder job than Nebraska, right?
Yeah, he's got an incredible winning percentage.
Yeah, he's been unreal. There's a reason every time he leverages them, and they know it's just leverage, that they pay him.
Yeah, it's a 68% win clip.
at a place that I think is really hard to win at.
That's the first school that came to mind because I heard for so long why they couldn't be better.
Is Nebraska a harder
You
job?
don't remember like the Leslie O'Neills, like they would have like these 4 or 5 really good players, and I think their fan base was like really wanting them to win more.
And it's like, no, you guys should be really thrilled that you're winning as much as you do.
Yeah, I love Leslie O'Neil. You remember Leslie O'Neil, Shane?
Oh yeah.
Who were the wide receivers?
Hartley Dykes?
Nope. There were brothers. Was it Woods?
Oh yeah.
They had the Woods brothers.
And you had Blackman. You had You had some guys.
You had some really nice players, but
quietly they had good running back. They've had some good running backs.
They have, but it's really hard to.
That would be a hard job.
That's a really hard job. Is Arkansas an easier job than Nebraska?
No.
Arkansas is a really hard job.
I would agree.
Mississippi State is a really hard job.
Unless you're Lane Kiffin.
No, that's Ole Miss. Mississippi State.
Mississippi State. Yeah. Stark Vegas. Well, so what's our claim to fame there? Would it be Dan
Mullen?
Yeah.
About has to be.
Because historically, it's still it's
a really hard job.
It's a hard job. Nobody's going to fight you over that.
That's a really hard job. But we look at all these places that have all the same expectations that we used to have at Nebraska, and nobody bats an eye, no matter how hard those jobs are. The only places you even blink at are like Georgia Tech or Vanderbilt, where you're like, come on, guys. Come on. Right?
Yeah.
And we think about Nebraska in those terms instead of thinking about them as, okay, well, it's an easier job than Arkansas or Oklahoma State or Kansas State or Iowa State or Iowa. It might be an easier job than Wisconsin considering the resources.
Still much bigger. I mean, State's got 7 times the population.
It does.
6.
It does. So I'm not saying, but we oftentimes, I think, conflate recruiting ease in state with ease of the job.
But I think that's the real discussion.
It's part of it.
That's what everybody. So you're like, if you're going to get pushback, they're going to go to those states.
Yes, they will. And I'll say, hey,
outside of like Mississippi,
one part of the job. Recruiting in state, yes, that's really nice if you got all the guys in your backyard, right? That's one part of what makes a job easier or hard. If you tell a coach, hey, you get Nebraska's population, but you get all their support, and they're at a school that doesn't have that much support.
I think you may be surprised on that, though.
You don't think they'd make that trade?
Boy, I gotta give that some thought.
Well, good news. You got a few minutes. We'll get back to it here after we wrap up hour number one on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, and got to remind you, it is your final week to go see the Omaha Supernovas in their last regular season home match. That's coming up on Thursday, May 9th. Make sure you get to supernovas.com to go get tickets and get all the information you need about your Omaha Supernovas. Good news is they have clinched a spot in the PVF Championships, which will be hosted here in Omaha as well. Go to supernovas.com for championship information and tickets as well, because even though it's the last regular season on Thursday, you will get one more, maybe 2 more chances to see your Omaha Supernovas before the season's over. That's all at supernovas.com. So I asked you the question, would you trade as a head coach? Would you trade resources and support for in-state talent?
Well, probably not. But I do think you're making some interesting assumptions.
Okay. What are those?
Number one, Nebraska's admin has been in flux for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you're using support very loosely.
Sure. Support I use to mean financial support, which really hasn't ever wavered.
So, well, I mean, it just depends, right? If you believe what you read or what you hear, there was money that Bo wanted to spend that he just couldn't. So, Callahan could overcome the recruiting, didn't love necessarily the working environment.
So here's my question, though.
But hang on.
Okay.
So let me just run through this.
Okay.
So we know how Bo felt about admin. I know how Callahan felt about admin. Mike Riley, remember infamously, had guys that came in to do a job that, in theory, was supposed to be a good idea, like general managers, but basically relieved him of power. We know about the Moose Frost relationship. I don't know. Like when I look at it, I think we're using stability pretty loose.
So I didn't say stability. I said support.
Okay.
So I would argue. I would argue they're different.
Well, if not for this discussion, because what you don't want me to do is get into what support means. So just leave it where it is and move on. Because I'll never let you make your point.
That's fair. I think we would also find similar dysfunction at most athletic departments. Now it's really close to us and we see it up close. So I know that it seems like a big deal.
Like what? Like 7 ADs in 12 years?
That's a lot of dysfunction.
I know.
I'm
just asking the questions.
But I think even if you're not having actual staff turnover, I mean, this one's off the top of my head. Florida State ran out a coach that had won a national championship because the AD and him didn't get along. Right? That's what happened with Jimbo Fisher. He took the Texas A&M job.
What if Florida State just saw the writing on the wall because they got the better end of the deal?
Eventually, right? First they got Willie Taggart, which was not the better end of the deal.
Sometimes love takes time.
But I'm just microcosm. 2 years after the guy wins the national title, and it ends up being the right decision to let him go, obviously. But in the moment, you're looking like, okay, this guy just won a title, then just went to a playoff, and now
that's even for a Florida State fan, that's kind of revisionist history because it was always a struggle. The last 3 years Jimbo was there, he was a headache and he was winning. He was raking you guys over the coals emotionally because he could. At some point, you just simply ask the question, is the juice worth the squeeze?
That's fair, but even with
romanticize about the end of his tenure.
Oh, I don't, believe me, I do not. But what I'm saying is it's a microcosm of dysfunction even when you're winning at a high level, right? I don't know that Nebraska's dysfunction, although the turnovers I would guess is higher than normal. 7 in 12 years is aggressive.
And I could be low. Aaron already called me on Wisconsin's population. I don't know why I thought they had 7 million people. And I still don't think Nebraska has 1.9, but I get what the numbers say. He's right, though. It's 4 times as much. It's not 6.
Either way.
I thought 7 million, 1 million.
Either way, like, I don't know how unusual Nebraska's dysfunction is.
It's fair. But so to land the plane, or do you want to get to TK real quick?
We can in a second here. Go ahead.
Okay. Because so I'm trying to figure out what is it if we land this plane on what you talked about in terms of aesthetics and Nebraska's opportunity from 4 to 12 to playoffs to winning. What gives you comfort in the blueprint right now? Is it the in-state talent plus now you think stability? Now we know we have resources. You got a collective that has been very good. You got to help me.
What gives me confidence now is the guy in charge.
Okay.
Because he seemed to me, this is the assumption I'm making. Okay, is that in athletic departments you've got a lot of kind of career bureaucrat type people that like power and kind of power moves and working behind. Like I think you have that in pretty much every athletic department and administration leadership in the country. So my assumption is the guys that are able to win at a high level are the guys that are able to most aptly navigate those things. And I think Coach Rule is that guy. I don't think Coach Rule has the same problems with Bill Moose that Scott Frost did. Right? Like I don't think that's the same situation. And we put a lot of that on Bill Moose. Obviously, a lot of it goes on Scott Frost as well. Is that to say that Bill Moose did a great job? Not necessarily. But I think a different personality in the head coaching job makes that end a lot differently. So what I get confidence from is the fact that I think Rule is able to navigate these situations in a way that, I mean, Bo was not exactly famous for being easy to get along with either, right? Bill Callahan, not exactly famous for being easy to get along with. Mike Riley, I don't even know what anybody thought he was doing here. So that was kind of a tough situation for him to be in.
It's amazing how hard we are on him. He's
I didn't think he was.
He's better than we thought.
No, he was.
I'm just
Especially, I mean, listen, he's the last coach to have any relevant year at Nebraska at all. Like, I'm not hating on Riley.
This dude's probably looking at the last 10 years of dysfunction or 8 years of dysfunction and just chuckling.
Being like, hey, I wasn't so bad, was I? No, I get it. I'm not hating on Riley, but situationally, most people didn't really know what he was doing here. I don't know that he had a strong enough personality to navigate any kind of dysfunction in the athletic department, or as you said, to deal with a power dynamic that he kind of created that backfired on him, right? And then you've got Scott Frost, who had a myriad of problems that we don't need to rehash again, right? So I think there's a argument to be made that the personality of the head coach goes a long way to making an athletic department look functional or dysfunctional.
Do you like the fact, because this was one of the things that I checked off on the box with Coach Rule, is this may not be perceived as his best job. And sometimes I always wanted in the ideal candidate that comes to Nebraska that be the case, because this place could spoil you in a hurry.
You mean his best job in the sense of what?
That he's
had?
Yeah.
So what, Carolina's better?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking college. I was like, Baylor and Temple are not better jobs. Yeah, no, that's fair. If it's the best job you've ever had, it's kind of easy to get big eyes and you see all the
it'll eat
bells
you up.
And whistles.
I think his worldly maturity
sure
is a very, very underappreciated aspect in this. It's not even a discern. It's not even all the other fancy words I like to use. I think it's his worldly maturity, what he's been, where he's been, what he's been through.
I mean, what was one of my complaints about Frost all the time? Emotional maturity. I didn't think he had any.
Like I think that's he's got a good skill set for here. He's one of the few guys that can pull off. He gives you the illusion that he's listening, and at the end of the day, if he wants to do his own thing, he's going to do his own thing. Right?
But he makes you feel heard.
Right.
That's important.
It's a tremendous skill.
It's an enormous skill to be able to feel heard,
especially here.
Yes,
where everybody has ideas.
Although, again, I don't think that's that different in a lot of places.
But listen to me though, a lot of people cave. I mean, just look at the job. Look at the job volatility since 18.
Yeah,
like this isn't. I'm not.
No, I get what you're saying.
So there's some. So in one hand, yeah, you're right. It's like this a lot of places, but staying power isn't. So, I mean, it's like Kenny Loggins, man. Meet me halfway.
Fair enough. Let's get to TK on the Hurrdat hotline. TK, what's going on, man?
TK, what's up, buddy?
How we doing?
We are doing okay. How are you?
Good. I just want to tell you my condolences to you and your family. You guys and your niece will be in our prayers.
I appreciate that. Not condolences yet, though, buddy.
But right. There's not too many words.
I got you. Thank you
to describe that.
Thank you. You're a good man, TK.
Now, while I was listening to the whole music from hell telling me to email a dude who don't even live there anymore, I got to think about your Ravi's question. If would a coach trade the Nebraska situation for a situation, say in Mississippi or in one of those talent-rich states? And I think it's really dependent on what type of coach you are.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a coach that likes to recruit and has the drive to recruit, then yeah, I'd take it in a heartbeat. But if not, if you don't have the willingness to try and search every nook and cranny for talent, then one, I don't know why you're in college football. Go to the NFL. And two, you probably wouldn't trade for Nebraska's situation.
Yeah, TK, I mean, that's fair, but I think we also have to remember, even in the talent-rich states, you may not have to drive as far or fly as far, but you still got to go hard because it's not like nobody else is recruiting Texas, you know? Like you got to go pretty hard on the trail anyway.
Yeah.
Right, but I think it's a little different because of just the sheer amount of travel. Like you have to think how tired like somebody like Ed Foley or Garrett McGuire is, where they're going all around these states, even like just to find talent. Like Garrett McGuire has probably visited every town in Texas in this past year, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
TK, we appreciate the call.
We can stay with that.
We'll stay with this topic as we kick off hour number 2 coming up next. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube as well. And we are brought to you by our friends over at Union Omaha. I have to remind you that this U.S. Open Cup round of 32 game is coming up on Wednesday. Union Omaha is hosting Sporting KC. It is the first time that an MLS team has played in Omaha. Union Omaha will be here will be there hosting Sporting KC in the U.S. Open Cup. Make sure you get to unionomaha.com to get tickets for that event. It's going to be a huge deal, and you should definitely get out there. That's unionomaha.com. All right, I want to circle back. We've kind of been riding this thread through a couple segments here about
this is all based on this all started because the last couple of weeks you're making the case for a 12-team playoff
in 2020 by 2026.
Yeah,
and I'm
here for it. I'm listening.
I firmly think that's possible, and a lot of it, as you said, comes down to, or as you got me to say, comes down to the belief in the guy in charge, right? Because I think a lot of the negatives we attribute to Nebraska's program and athletic department are pretty constant throughout college football. It's a place where a lot of big egos tend to congregate in athletic departments, and especially in big revenue sports like basketball and football. And I just don't believe for a second, just because we're not privy to it to the same degree, that this isn't going on other places. What I do believe is if you've got the right, you said this about Rule, he's got a very good skill set for this place.
Yes.
I could not agree more.
Yeah, that was apparent early.
Yeah.
And he's done that, like,
it continues to be like, every time that we talk to him or hear from him, I just think it's more and more true.
And this isn't like, I get the jokes, right? It's like, I mean, people know that we get along well, and I'm appreciative. But again, I'd rather be right than well liked. And like now we're invested, like from a family standpoint too. So
sure,
like
you've got real skin in the game.
Real skin in the game. And so like when I think about like temperament, I had a wish list, and I've said this for
guys that were going to coach Caleb.
No.
For guys that were going to coach in Nebraska.
At Nebraska.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So we're going back to right after Bo left. I said this out loud. There were a couple things that I wanted to do. Number one, I wanted coaches that would just say out loud where we were at, what was going on, right? Just, I would always say, hey, why don't I have like a State of the Union?
Sure.
Just let people know what you're dealing with. That way we can't gossip, we can't assume, we can't do any of that. We know right where we're at, right? So that's the expectation level. I also said, you have to be grimy. You have to be a grinder. You cannot. This place will eat you up. It can make you spoiled too. It can make you lazy. So you needed a grinder. I said I would prefer. This wasn't a prerequisite. I would prefer that we got somebody where this wasn't their best job because of the aforementioned vices.
Spoiling,
right? Like if you come with certain foibles. This place can accentuate them
for sure
in a hurry.
For sure.
Right? So it's a good place to be if it's a good place to be if you can handle the bonuses, right? And I wanted obviously emotional maturity.
But the trappings can get to you, is your point.
And I wanted emotional maturity.
Yeah. To help deal with those trappings.
Right. I also and I remember saying this to one of my former partners, and it was actually severe early in like year one of us being him being back. I said it would be nice if we had somebody that could actually communicate if they didn't want to do a State of the Union, that knew how to utilize the media. And we got into a little bit of a back and forth where he obviously wanted me to explain it. And I'm like, it's not the gamesmanship of using the media, but you have to understand how the media works.
Yeah.
Don't have to give in to it. You just have to understand how the media works. Or instead of being resentful of it or the fishbowl or the whatever.
Like Bo was. He was adversarial with the media.
Play, like do what
Use
they
it.
do. Yeah. Do what they do well.
Yeah.
And I stop me if I haven't described something that
Coach Rule was incredible at.
Yeah. And so we're going back 10 years that I'd say this. And my favorite, and it flies way under the radar. He's not afraid he's not afraid to tell you where the floor has been. Like, let's be realistic. We don't win a lot of games at home. Hey, listen, we haven't been to a bowl game.
How many times has he said?
Do you know how many times we've lost to Wisconsin? Hey, listen, like, he's not afraid to take us down off our high horse too. Like, he had the infamous. It's not infamous. He had the great quote. Let me do what are you guys going to tell me about winning?
Yeah.
That's basically what he said.
Yeah. Because you guys haven't done a lot of it. I've done a lot more.
I'm listening, but hey, let me do my job.
Well, and
that was one of the greatest things he's ever said.
Yeah. Well, how many times you've heard him say, "Hey, we're 5-7 until we're not anymore"?
Yeah.
How many times you heard him say, "Hey, if I was a Nebraska fan, I'd love it if we just didn't put the ball on the ground."
Yeah, right? Because you got to earn the right to go play Minnesota.
That's where the program's at right now, and and he mentioned it. He's like, yeah, even if we go 12-0, there's still going to be things that I want to work on. There's still going to be things because nobody's ever perfect, right? So you just keep going. That's that grinder mentality that you talk about is like, hey, it doesn't matter if you're 5 or 7 or 12-0. There's still one more thing to work on, right? I will say I think it's interesting because you mentioned the relationship with the media, right? It felt like Bo and Frost were more adversarial with the media. Bo more than anyone, but especially by the end, it's the last couple of years, I'd say it seemed like Frost had mostly a contentious relationship with the media.
Yeah, which was weird because they could have been much worse.
Oh,
but anyway.
Sure. And then it felt like Riley was, again, I don't want to hate on Riley, but it seems like the media treated him a lot like kind of just a punchline, just the way he acted, and he was sort of, Grandpa Mike and whatever, and he just seemed like this your funny old uncle or whatever that was, you're like, what is he doing running a Fortune 500 company right now? Right. And so I agree with you, being able to use the media to your advantage, because it can actually be, I mean, if you're a Nebraska head football coach, it can be the most powerful branding tool that you've got, right? If you're able to use it for that and not create this contentious relationship, it can be the best megaphone you could ever have.
It's weird too, because you have to be really, really secure in who you are. So if you get guys in the media or gals in the media that feel like they need to be the smartest person in the room or whatever, like, you can know they're not and still have that be advantageous anyway.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
You could not care what I may ask or whomever, Sam or Sean or Mitch or who, like, and it's like, just let it go, like, move on. Right? It can bug you, or it can, well, I can't, and you just don't have to go with the snark back and forth. But the only way you can do that is
if you're secure,
if you're cool with who you are.
Well, and what do you say all the time, right? What can you learn from people you disagree with?
Yeah.
How many times I don't think people ask a ton of snarky questions, but I think people, especially at the end of last year, as things were kind of going sideways, people would ask tough questions. And how many times did you see him take something that maybe was either a loaded question and just diffuse it and take it in the direction he wanted to go?
Oh yeah.
Right. Same thing with all the Dylan Raiola questions. Everybody wants.
So it's funny you bring that up.
Yeah.
Because we talk and we kind of wax poetic about, like, oh man, this bit, let's rainbows and butterflies, man. We're like the Jeffersons moving on up. People forget how beautifully it was handled when there was some in-game stuff and decision making and losing coach close games that we don't even talk about anymore.
I mean, how about all the stuff with Satterfield?
How about just like timeout situations? Wisconsin, Maryland,
kicking a field goal, going for it.
We don't even bring that up.
Nope.
Right? That's how you know. Like, that lets me know. Again, we talked about a dumb onside kick sabotaging a season. Like, it was. I couldn't believe how we spoke that into existence. And I used to say to people, why do you guys keep bringing that up? Like, you know what you're saying, right? Like, that one thing caused this great big snowball, and we're going to hang our hat on that. It used to drive me up the wall, because not only does it show and talk out loud about emotional weakness, you're perpetuating the madness where you can't shake something and move on.
Well,
what
did Rule talk about on Thursday with us?
Whole lots.
Well, he did, but expectation theory, right?
Oh yeah, that was kind of
That's what it is.
That was kind of that was kind of crafty. I
Right?
like that he's
Like, I get what you're saying, that it's absurd to think, hey, one onside kick while you were still ahead, and you were still ahead after they scored, ruined an entire season. But I also think it's possible that team was so mentally fragile,
maybe,
that it really did, right? Because of that expectation theory, where they're like, oh no, here we go again, right? You're coming off of what, the best 3-9 team in history, right? That's what all the one-score losses, and they kick it the wrong direction at Michigan State and lose, and they fumble at Michigan and lose, and they should have won all these other games, right? So it's the first game of the season after all that, and all you've heard all offseason is, oh, we're so close, so close, so close, and then the thing goes wrong again. Like, I think there's a argument to be made that the mental fragility of that team actually was broken by that, right? Should they have been? Absolutely not. Is that something that the coaching staff should have been able to course correct on? 100%. That doesn't mean they did. And I think that's in a microcosm, the major difference between what we're talking about with previous teams and previous staffs and with Coach Rule, right? Because he not only is aware of it, because I think that's the biggest problem, right? Is being aware of, hey, this is a thing. And this is a thing.
Let alone being able to communicate it.
Yeah, being able to communicate it and being able to fix it, right? What did he say to us on Thursday? He goes, hey, yeah, we went 0-2, and then we won 5 out of 6, and then we went 0-4. You didn't die. Nothing bad happens. You're not broken as a person. Everybody that matters still loves you. He said all those things, right? And it's all true because he's trying to take.
He sure did.
He's trying to take remote misses and make them near misses, right? He's trying to take that fear, that expectation of something bad's going to happen because we heard a bomb in the distance, to, hey, we're walking down the street and taking what we want, right? Regardless of the bombs coming or not. Let's get to Jay on the Hurrdat hotline. Jay, what's going on, man? Jay, you there?
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
What's up, buddy?
Hey, I'm on air.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you're on
Hey,
air.
how you doing, guys?
Hey, we're good. How you doing?
I'm well, man. I'm well. Let me say this, man.
Big boy conversation. I apologize this morning.
No, I don't want to pile on, but if we need to start a GoFundMe for a new phone system, I'm all for it, bro. Like, I think let's do it.
Wow.
Let's do whatever we need to do to get to where we can hear the radio while we're on hold. And like, whatever we need to do, start it on social media. I'll tap in and add my $1 or $2. Okay.
All right, my man.
That's not what I want to talk about. I want to say, first off, Ravi,
by the way, your delivery is so disarming. You almost had, I was like all ears to get cut down.
Because it was in love, David.
Yeah, I got
this
you.
It's said in love. It's not said in malice or anything. It's said like, come on, let's just make it better together, bro. That's what we're saying. That's all we're saying. So
Shane is over here laughing.
Here's what I want to say though, is to not to quote, but I have to quote the member of the Titans. Attitude, leadership reflects attitude.
Captain.
And as a Husker fan, and real quick, I remember when my wife, for my anniversary, bought me season tickets for the first year, right? And it was like, it blew my mind. It was a dream come true. And I think me and my son, I think the first season was, I think Bo's last year, and the next season was when we got Riley, right? Mm-hmm. And I could just to be honest, like all of the progressions from coach to coach, from, Solis to Callahan and so on and so forth, like that statement reigns more true than ever. Now, if I look back in hindsight, right? I look back in hindsight, I can see every team reflecting the leadership of what's going on in the locker room. I could see Callahan having overconfident, You know what I'm saying? Guys that, at sometimes I could just see it. I could see how Bo's influence, and you can see that even with the Bo players that come and speak or on social media or whatever, they still will play for Bo. Like, you could tell that it was us against the world in that locker room. And for whatever reason, Nebraska couldn't get with that program. You could see that Riley was a laid-back type of guy. But, in hindsight again with Riley, he had done it for years successfully in Oklahoma State. I mean, not Oklahoma, forgive me, but
Oregon State.
Yeah, Oregon State. That's what the O was. Oregon State. It's not like he was like a perennial champion, but he had ran a clean, successful program year after year after year after year. And like Damon said, you could see how his personality, being somewhat affable, could come into Nebraska and kind of bend and sway with whatever wind that was coming in, while still trying to pave his own way, if you will. Then you could see with Scott Frost, like, it was crazy, just to be honest. And to, from the media's perspective, y'all did an amazing job covering Scott Frost. Y'all made Scott Frost look like, he was doing a job that I believe some of the media knew he was not doing. You know what I mean? So now that we see Matt Rule come in, to be honest, this is the first time that we have an all-around coach. Like, this is a throwback to what could have been, if we wouldn't have transitioned so many times, if we would have continued with a coaching tree, like from Osborne to Solich to whomever, you would have had a pattern of, just conduct and what the program is expecting of student athletes and the state and everybody. We just would have had a consistency that I think would have benefited the program. So all that to say, I am, extremely excited to see what can happen when Matt Rule comes in and gives you all of this consistency, this pattern, this logical, logic model type of approach to everything. Like, if you do this, you get this. If you do this, you get this. I love it, man. And his temperament keeps us at bay. He gives us enough to fill up our little podcast or whatever, but he does not bend and sway. You know what I mean? You could tell that he's running his program while appeasing our appetites just to know.
Okay, so I said something to Ravi earlier. I said he has this unique ability to give you the impression that he's listening, and I'm not saying he's not listening, but he's like taking your information, and it's like, oh yeah, it's a good idea. That's a good idea. Even knowing good and well, probably at the end of the day, he's going to do what he sees fit, right? Like, that's a skill, right? Do you see that? Do you
know
see
why
that
it comes off that way though? Because if you actually have something that he can learn from, he will take it. That's why it comes off like he's listening, because he is listening.
Because he has enough,
and that he has enough of a
like
track record.
Like installing Pat and Go.
Yeah, right.
Seems minor.
He's not like Bo came off as so stuck in his ways that you couldn't tell him anything. You could have told him the sky was blue, and if he thought it was green, he was going to.
And he's given us just enough of stations and competitive practice.
He's given you just enough of the things that, like, hey, I'm willing to learn if it is going to be beneficial. I'm not going to put it in though just because you tell me to.
I think you hit it right on the head, Robbie. Matt Rule is a continuous learner. That's all. He's someone that looks to find out, knows he doesn't know everything, but is looking to find out where everything is, right? I just want to learn. And I share that sentiment with him. I'm somebody that loves to learn. I think everybody has something to offer, right? That doesn't mean I don't have a plan. That doesn't mean I don't have a strategy or what I'm trying to execute.
Or because I listen to you, that doesn't necessarily mean I like you either.
That doesn't mean you're right either. Right. Like, he'll listen, doesn't mean you're right.
Yeah.
I don't gotta like you to learn from you either.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have to be your best friend for you to share some wisdom with me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But anyway, good stuff, man.
I appreciate it, Jay.
Stuff, and before I leave, did you see Ant-Man?
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Hey, I asked Ravi, because he was talking about what's aesthetically pleasing. Do you like watching Minnesota's offense?
I love it.
You do? Ugh.
I love it. You know why? Because you don't even get me started. I love looking at their offense. Did you see the plays they was running in the second, third quarter? I can see they coach going between, y'all go ahead and ball, and then when I come out this timeout, when I come out this break, I'm going to bust their head with an easy bucket. And then they run the same thing over. Man, it's yeah, man. Just knowing, just say this, man. Any Denver fan out there, don't fool yourself. What you saw was real. It's over. You know what I mean? It's like that. Yeah, your man. And let me say this, too. I'm mad that they give Joker so much props, Damon. I mean, TV. I'm mad at it.
Well, he's the real deal.
man, he's not. Man, I just say this, Bill. I would say this. Let me say this, and I gotta go. And this is my.
I feel a hot take coming.
It is. It's hot, burning hot. Right, but what if you put Joker's skill set, athleticism, right, and size in another package? I'll say it that way. He's not in the league. He looks like the guy that you see hooping. Like, I mean, come on, man. As much as this man had.
If he's 5'11", Jay, he's not in the league. I agree with you. But, like, that's
I'm saying if you put another package, he's 7 foot, right? I'm talking about his athleticism. He can't jump over a cardboard box.
Why aren't other big guys going 23, 10, and 9? 23, 12, and 9.
Did you watch the game? Did you see this? They let this man push off in ways that you cannot push off in YMCA basketball, bro. This man throws his shoulder in the chest, extends his arm.
When it's in slow motion like that, it doesn't look like a foul.
What'd you say? It doesn't. You're right, Robbie. When it's in slow motion, it don't look
That's
like
why
a
you
foul.
can get away with it. It doesn't look like a foul when it's in slow motion.
Yeah, we definitely got a hot take. Jay, I appreciate the call, champ.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a great one, man.
Yep.
I will say I don't love when people do that because we don't do it equally, right? Where you're like, oh, if we took his skill set and put it in a different body, it wouldn't work. It's like, well, yeah, of course. You put Shaq's skill set in my body. Guess what? I'm not going to the league.
Yeah, I just have a hard time with that when I just watched Embiid take 65% of his shots from outside the paint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even at
I couldn't even get
5'11".
I couldn't even get 10 and 6 from Tobias Harris.
I
don't know.
Couldn't get anything from Tobias Harris.
I'm just saying,
except for stolen money. No, but I mean, there's no 6'6" guys in the league with that skill set, much less 7-footers, right? So you can't. It's not even an apples to apples comparison because he's got a skill set that nobody else has. It's the same thing with Steph, right? It's like you could put his skill set in a 6'6" guy and see what happens, but we've never seen it. There's never been that skill set in a bigger guy. So that kind of got off track from what we were talking about a little bit, but get me all up in a dander about skill sets and because I'll take skilled guys over athletic guys every day of the week.
100%.
Every day of the week.
I'm in agreement.
That's why I was originally on that Lulla train so hard, right? Because I looked at a guy that's a hyper skilled guy who I thought was athletic enough to get it done. But getting back to Nebraska, Coach Rule, I did want to talk about the camp that they had this weekend in North Omaha. We asked them about it on Thursday. They got it done over the weekend. And I think there's a lot in there as to why they did it and why it matters for Nebraska football. We'll get to that and more coming next on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube from the Pillar Exterior Stage. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. I want to remind you to make sure you get out and support our friends at the Team Jack Foundation. Go to teamjackfoundation.org to see what events you can get involved in. You can donate directly on the page, and you can see all the great projects that Team Jack is helping to fund with over $12 million and counting raised to date. They're partnering with Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, Memorial Sloan Kettering, and, of course, Nebraska Medical Center, in addition to many more projects to accomplish their very simple but not easy goal of finding better treatments for childhood brain cancer and one day a cure. That's teamjackfoundation.org to get involved. DB, wanted to get into that North Omaha camp that Coach Rule and company had in Omaha here this weekend. Super cool event. You mentioned in our interview with him on Thursday, something that people have been trying to do for a while that they couldn't really get off the ground. Could you get a little more into that for me?
Because I remember, like, Niles Paul was really, he would want to come back and kind of do things. And I just didn't feel like, and listen, full disclosure, I don't know how much he wanted Nebraska's support in it.
Okay.
So maybe he just kind of wanted to do it on his own, but I felt like that could have been something that Nebraska could have piggybacked on, right? Especially if you wanted because how long did we hear that? Hey, man, we need to get back into the metro. We need to get back into the metro. We need to get back into the metro.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's a guy that's trying really, really hard, coming back to get back into the metro. Didn't get, what I felt like could have been easy. And maybe they were unaware or what. It could have been a multitude of reasons. Fact remains, Nebraska found a way to get it done, right? I mean, he's gravitated towards this homegrown program, allowing kids to use the facility on Sundays, getting some help from the players. It didn't seem like it was that novel of a concept for Abdul and those guys to start. It was just something, maybe they finally just had a guy say yes. And maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was, hey, Mickey, we got a really good relationship. We're former teammates. This is kind of an idea that I have. And, Coach Joseph was like, okay, cool. Right. Coach Rule has got it and kind of doubled down. But to bring it to Omaha, I felt like was really, really interesting, just because they hadn't been able to pull it off, and they sold it out in a super short amount of time, and then had to get 2 different locations last minute, right? Which is what I was telling you, where it was like, okay, we're going to do something. It may not be smooth. Keep your intentions pure. We'll figure it out when we get
along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and he said something to us on Thursday about the camp, right? That I really, really resonated with me, in the sense of, he talked about how if the kids couldn't come to their camps, they'd bring their camps to them, right? Whether it was North Omaha, whether it was Western Nebraska, because he talked about, hey, we want to do a bunch more of these, right? And he talked about it some in the context of, yeah, it would be great if, these third graders are bringing pictures of, then he made I'm going to call it a joke about Cooper or Garrett being the head coach by then. Not sure he was actually joking. I think he might have been serious.
Well, I think everybody picked at that, right? Good to the good or bad.
Yeah.
It's just showing you like
his plans.
Yeah.
Like he plans on developing for whenever he leaves this place.
Yeah,
he's got a successor in place.
It just happened to roughly coincide with the 8-year mark of his.
Now, I would love it if he was here longer than that. I think that was the text I sent you. It was like, man, he better be here longer than 9 years. But, he mentioned, hey, yeah, it'd be really cool to have guys coming up with pictures of me when they were in 3rd grade or 6th grade or whatever, as they commit to the University of Nebraska. But then he mentioned his daughters, right? About how that experience they had with the women's basketball team at the spring game. And he mentioned just the impact it can have whether you ever play for Nebraska or not. And the thing that I really appreciated about that is, and it's kind of the same thing when Coach Foley goes out to these high schools that he's probably not getting guys from, right? There's probably not going to be a ton of Division I prospects at some of these high schools that he goes out and visits in the state of Nebraska, right? Maybe a one-off here or there, but for the most part, you're probably not getting a lot of juice in return for that squeeze. But it matters because you're creating equity in the state, right? You're investing in the state, and there is a return on that investment outside of just the players that may come from a certain area, right? Like if you create this sense of goodwill for the program and for your coaching staff, that's only to the positive to you, but it's also to the positive for the state too, right? Because this program means so much to everybody here, and acknowledging that and embracing people for that rather than making it adversarial or making it, it's the program versus the fans, or, instead of making it a burden about the fishbowl, looking at it, look at this incredible opportunity we have. Look at, whether it's 1.9 or 1.5 or however many million people live in Nebraska, right? If you can get every single one of those people on board, you're in really good shape, right? Everybody's pulling in the right direction. You're in really good shape. And it's not just self-serving, though, because those kids, like you said, maybe the dream of playing for Nebraska makes them make one better decision as they're growing up.
And he said the uncomfortable part out loud too, right? A lot of times these kids aren't going to have the opportunity. Some other kids in some other parts of the city would be able to attend a camp.
Yeah.
These guys can't. for some. So we're going to bring the camp to them and cut out the confusion. Not worrying about how correct it is or how it sounds. It's just the reality of it, right?
And when your heart's in the right place, you can say those things.
And I remember this, and this hasn't gone without good intentions. It was, Coach Frost and Coach Lambrick really wanted to do something in the city of Omaha, right? Hey, we want to provide food. We're going to do a camp. Now they hit a snag with transportation, right? I think they were going to try to provide transportation. I think they ended up paying mileage versus providing
transportation,
which seems like well-intentioned, but it's still a hurdle.
Yes.
And the kids had to go to Lincoln, right? So the ideal was there, right? Hey, let's bridge this connection. Let's serve those that tend to be underserved. Let's try to do this. I get it. The difference is okay, how can we make it more efficient? Let's go there.
Yeah.
Right. So it's been something that the schools wanted to do for a long, long time.
Is it putting too fine a point on it to say the major difference between previous staff and this staff? Staffs, yeah. Multiple staffs going back.
Yeah.
And the current staff is they are just going to find a way to get what they want to do done.
Yep.
Right? Because can you imagine a world?
So let me go back to your original point from the first hour.
Okay.
That when you said support of admit, would they trade the support? That's really what you're talking about. Hey, this is what we want to do. We'll do this. We got the legwork. We'll you need to provide a way for us to make this happen.
Yeah.
Whether it's team transportation,
we need XYZ.
This is what we need.
Yeah.
Athletic department, make it happen. That's what you're talking about.
Yep.
Hey, you know what?
When there's an ask,
we need a plane.
Yeah.
If you want us to play catch up with some of these other people that we're recruiting to, and this is the flight times that we have from Lincoln out of Lincoln, and the airport, the good idea we were going to have the airlines that didn't work.
Just get us a plane.
We need a plane.
Yeah. You know what's cheaper than starting a whole airline? Just buy a plane.
And they've figured out a way to. So I think sometimes don't sell short, and not that you are, just in general, like having the vision.
Yeah.
And he's also not afraid. Like he'll make you tell him no.
Yeah, he'll make you tell him no, and he'll make you give him a good reason why.
So
right, maybe that's the difference.
And most of us can't even really do that.
Make people tell you no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just won't ask. I admire folks that could just put it out there.
It goes back to this thing that I didn't learn until a handful of years ago. Nobody's going to give you what you want unless you ask for it. And it's really uncomfortable sometimes. But what's the alternative? Is you just never get what you want.
Yeah.
Right? I'd rather get told no than never even have the opportunity to get told yes.
I'll get there at some point.
Hey, one of these days. That's DB. I'm Ravi. We'll wrap up hour number 2 coming up next. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube from the Pillar Exterior Stage. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, and this is your last week to get out to Lawrence Gardens for the Brick Live Brickosaurs exhibit. It goes extinct on the 12th. That's a week from yesterday. So make sure you get out to Lawrence Gardens to see over 30 dinosaur sculptures made of over 1.5 million bricks. And it's all surrounded by the prehistoric plants that they would have been surrounded with in real life. It is a ton of fun for the whole family. Get to lawrencegardens.org for your tickets. Random NFL QB.
Got one for me?
This is an easy one, I think.
Okay.
Jimmy G.
Oh, Jimmy Garoppolo. Wow. You may have got me.
Did I get you?
Wait.
I got to make sure I know this one.
How do I not? Gosh, I know Rich Gannon, but not Jimmy Garoppolo.
It's
Why
another.
wouldn't you know Rich Gannon and not Jimmy? I mean, one's a way better quarterback than the other. We'll just leave it at that.
Whoa.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
I mean, Rich was an MVP. That's probably fair. You want a hint?
Yeah.
Let me double check, make sure my hint's right. It is the same school as Tony Romo.
Oh, is it Eastern Illinois?
It is Eastern Illinois.
Okay.
That's a tough one.
It is tough.
That's a tough one.
Man.
I probably only think it's easy because he was my quarterback for a while, so it kind of sinks in with me a little better. But
who had the more prolific career? Like, whose college is that? Romo's or Jimmy G's?
Whose college career was better?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good question. I'll look that up.
I'm just curious. Like, we say whose city is it?
Yeah. Who does that college belong to?
Yeah. Who has all the records?
Let's see if we've got
That's a beautiful question.
Well, thanks, Coach. Although I wasn't the one that asked it was Ravi.
That was my question.
Hey, was that your career made?
Oh yeah.
He called it beautiful.
That's a beautiful question.
That's the moment where I went from like kind of nervous to like settled in. Just being totally
You're
honest.
such a nerd.
Why? Why am I a nerd?
I don't know.
Listen, I'm being honest here. Being
never going to deal with the heat. You know what I'm saying? So
being transparent. Man, that's not real. It's not real apparent what Tony Romo did in college. I want to ask you a question though, okay? Because we were talking about this earlier. Because we were talking about support versus in-state talent, talking about resources versus in-state. Whether you take those trades, right? So I'm going through some places in my head here that have more in-state talent than Nebraska. Would you rather be at NC State?
That's a hard one.
Or Nebraska?
NC State has had more success recently.
But do we have to divorce the results from the job?
Well, okay, so this is hard because I'm one of the not few, and I should ask Sipple this. He's a historian.
We'll talk with Sipple at 9, by the way.
Because I've always made the case that Nebraska's performance in the 70s, 80s, and 90s was significantly more of an outlier than an indicator.
So,
I mean, they were just defiant.
I know what you mean, but over that period of time, it's hard for me. Like, if it had just been the 90s or if it had just been the 70s, I would have a lot easier timing. Those are outliers, right? But it's 3 decades of dominance over 2 different coaches.
Not really, though. It was 4 or 5 years in each decade.
Okay, and then how would you describe the rest of it? Just really, really good football? Because, they never played bad football. Like, that's... What's the worst record in that 30 years?
Well, they played poor enough to want to get rid of a coach.
Just because people are unreasonable doesn't mean they played bad.
I can only answer the question.
Well, so, Mike, what was their worst record over that time frame?
Oh, T.O. had some, I think when he wasn't beating Oklahoma, I think he had 2 8-win years, didn't he?
So 8-3, basically. Is that somewhere?
And there was, I know there were 8-win seasons, 9-3, a couple of 9-3s in the 80s.
So T.O. never had fewer than 9 wins.
Okay, 9.
So, there's some 9-3s in there. The worst you had was you had 2 3-year stretches in the late 70s that were 9-3.
Yep.
And then you were back to 12 wins. 82, 83, 84, obviously really good. And then you have a 3-year stretch in the early 90s that's 9 wins. But that's the worst of it.
That's what I'm saying, though.
But that's really good football for a really long time.
And it was just one.
I get that was not satisfying to the people at the time, but
don't you have to say that out loud though?
To say for what reason?
Because it's part of the program's development, right? They won at such a rate, and then relative to their own success, they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Then they won at such a rate, and then relative to their own success, they didn't.
That's kind of my point, though, is that Nebraska was so good for so long that 9 wins seemed like failure.
Okay, when you go back and you look at is that how you weren't around?
I
wonder if that's how people view the 80s.
Probably not,
because I don't think so.
But I also don't know if I don't know if how people felt in the moment is the most accurate version of that.
And you're really talking about how many years of double-digit wins? I'm going to guess.
For Osborne?
I'm going to guess and through when he took over.
Okay, so 72, right?
Through
73.
Through 97, he had.
How many 10-win seasons? Is that question?
Yeah, I'm going to guess. So how many years is 72 to 97? 25? 26 seasons? Yeah. I'm going to guess he had double-digit wins 17 of those.
15.
Did you think it was higher? Did you think out loud it would be higher?
No. I didn't.
That's weird because I get the sense. I need more help on this. I felt like a lot of times that wasn't good enough. More than not.
Right. But part of it's okay. What are we talking about?
So you get the luxury of looking back.
Yeah, it's retrospect for me. It's all looking back at it.
I think and so am I to some degree.
Yeah, for a lot of it, for most of it. Most of what we're talking about time frame wise.
I don't know if that was good enough.
Right, but again,
I think it was. I think Nebraska, given what it was doing, was an outlier.
That's it's an outlier in the sense that from population base and yes, it's an outlier. But at a certain point, over a certain period of time, doesn't it just become the standard?
I don't know. It depends on when you start, right? The 20s, the 30s, 1890s.
I mean, you go back to the 19. I don't know. Go back to the 70s, at least. That's
70s is fair.
We're talking 55 years at this point. It's easy to start at the first national title, right?
Yeah, but remember, from like 12 on, from 2012 to 2024, you don't get those years to the good. They're not good.
Right. So that's why I said the 30 years.
And 12 is generous. You may go back to
2009, probably 2010, maybe.
Yeah, but you still have to factor in 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah, those are probably out. Just 6 and 7.
Are we talking about 30? Are we talking about 35 good years?
I'm talking about 30. I called it 30. I called it 70 to 2000.
Yeah, I just don't know. That's
30 really good years. Literally every other program in the country would take that 30-year run. Every program. You could sign up for that today. Every program in the country would take that 30-year run. Say 30 years, you get 5 national titles, you're never below 9 wins, and you get at least, what is it? I only counted through.
Relative to how long they've been playing sports, football.
Yeah. Every program in the country today would sign up for that run.
Yeah, Kevin brings up a good point. 85 to 91, losing 6 straight bowl games was a rough stretch.
Yeah, it was.
So I think we're I feel like the championships was kind of out kicking our coverage.
That's really
kind of
for the state.
Yes, for the state,
because not for the talent.
For the state of Nebraska, again, we're afforded the luxury of. I hate to say this, but going in, none of the 3 games in which we in 93, 95, 95, we weren't favored to win.
Yeah.
So we get to go back and say, oh man, they had some dudes. People weren't really thinking that then. They didn't think we had enough dudes.
Well, okay, so
what was 93? I was trying to not get cut. What was the line in Tennessee, Nebraska when they stomped the muddle in Tennessee? Was Nebraska favored?
I'd have to go back and look.
Does somebody remember?
93, 94 are totally fair. With what the team did in 95,
we weren't favored against Florida.
I understand that, but that was stupid. Like, just because somebody
we're afforded that luck. We get to go back.
Okay, but you can't tell me even at the time that NFL people weren't looking at your roster.
Did you not look? Yes, I'm telling you that. I'm telling you.
So
you weren't going to draft our quarterback.
No.
You weren't going to draft our wide receivers.
No, but you were going to draft the running backs. You were going to draft the lines. You were going to draft the defense. Like, how many guys on that team ended up in the league for a long time?
I think it was more given our states. We outkicked our coverage, and we made it the norm.
Okay, but
because
once it
it
becomes
was
the
so
norm,
good.
Once it becomes the norm, you can't really consider it an outlier
Well,
anymore.
maybe we're just returning to the mean until we get some more similar things in place. I'm spitballing out loud. I think you have to give that a little bit of thought.
I do. I just really struggle with calling a 30-year run an outlier. That's where I'm honestly
relative to the state and the university.
Yeah, like if it happens for that long,
I don't know if it's a 30-year run. I think it's. I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it a run.
We got Sipple coming up next. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and now for the third hour on KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube from the Pillar Exterior stage. And I got to tell you, if you didn't get over to Warhorse Sportsbook to place your Kentucky Derby bets, you made a mistake. If you would have taken Mystic Dan, I didn't. I like Stronghold and Society Man because their names gave me good vibes. So didn't get the W's on that one. Hopefully Mama Benning did better than I did. But either way, there's still plenty to try and win on over at Warhorse Sportsbook, whether it's NHL, NBA, MLB, whatever you can think of. You can place live bets, parlay, straight bets, in-game bets as well, props at the casino in Lincoln or at Horseman's Park in Omaha. If you have questions, go to warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook for a full list of details and house rules. That's Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. As we effort one Stephen M. Sipple here.
I just sent him a message asking him if he's ready.
I think the differentiation you and I are having about this conversation is I agree with your premise. I agree that Nebraska has no business being a national college football power, right? Yet, for 30 years, now you push back on the 30 years.
I do, man.
For an extended period of time, however you would like to define that time, Nebraska found itself amongst the college football elite.
Yeah, I'm simply telling you, we way outkicked our coverage. For the population base, the locale, the level of success,
But here's my question. At what point?
Ask Sip. He's ask Sip.
Sip is joining us now. Stephen, what's the M stand for today?
Today it will be, let's go back to Marcellus.
Stephen Marcellus Sipple from Husker Online. Sip, what's going on, bud?
I think Shane just punched him up.
We're going to punch him up there, Shano.
Sip, you there, buddy?
Yep, he's there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, buddy. How we doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Oh, we need you to settle something here for us.
We're arguing a little bit here, Sip. So I described, and I know you weren't here covering Nebraska for all of it, but I described.
Well aware of the 70s, though.
Yeah.
He was like 30.
No, I was not.
Listen, he's coming on our program. And you're just disparaging the man.
Totally launched into the age thing right away.
Just shots fired right off the bat. I'm sorry about that, Sip.
Oh, Lord. Now Ravi's the normal one. And now here we go.
You know, I'm very reasonable. People know this about me.
I'm on Team Ravi right now.
All right. Well, let him ask the question and then let's go.
Okay, Sip. So let me ask you this. When you look at the run from, let's call it 1970 through 2001, would you call that a dominant run of college football?
It's a leading question.
I mean, come on. I think if you say at times it was. I don't think it was. I don't think you would say over there. No, I'd say at times it was dominant. That's how I would put it.
Okay. Right now, you're Team DB. Your Team D. So this is where this whole thing was birthed from. So because Ravi is and I don't necessarily disagree with him. He's kind of put 2026. He's like, gosh, you know, it wouldn't surprise me in a 12-team playoff if Nebraska puts themselves in position. And so it got me thinking. Number one, we're fast forwarding, right? I'm like, I just want to get to a bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say that without minimizing where I want to go. I just incremental steps, but I'm not capping Nebraska at just getting to a bowl game because I don't feel like fighting Coach Rule over that. But what I am saying is we've been talking as though for like the last 20 years, like those times Nebraska was dominant, we act like we didn't really outkick our coverage. Like given our locale and our population, What Nebraska accomplished was, I didn't say, did I say anomaly?
You said outlier.
It's an outlier. Like,
okay, but Sip, here's the question.
And it made a sport. And Ravi, he's like giving me pushback on that.
No, but here's my question, Sip. I agree that for all of those factors, it is an outlier. Nebraska has no business being a dominant college football power. But at what point, if you are something for so long, does that just become the norm?
Well, does that apply? Does it apply to negative? Does it apply to being bad?
Sure,
because we've been bad for a while.
A little while, not as bad for as long as people think.
I think we're misremembering.
No, that's a good point. I mean, it's success. I mean, you're kind of getting into the success begets success, and there was some of that. I will say that I think, I got to be careful how I say this. I think it was taken for granted, the success, by some people, not by everybody. There were people that looked on in sort of awe in those times, the 70s to the early 2000s, at what Nebraska was doing because of the geographic limitations. You almost couldn't say it around here because people go, because there was a faction of people that would always say to me, "What limitations? We don't have limitations." And I'd say, "Yeah, we do."
Sounds like Ravi.
I don't call it limitations. I call it challenges. I call it opportunities for growth.
But I was always in the camp of, this is extraordinary what's going on. I always felt that way. Even when I wasn't covering it, in the 70s and 80s, I wasn't. But I thought it was extraordinary. And it almost seemed odd to me. Like, wow, how it didn't seem odd from the standpoint of you just had two remarkable leaders during that period, Devaney and Osborne. They were remarkable. If you go back in time and talk to people about Devaney, he was a remarkable leader. He was very charismatic. He just knew what he was doing. He was a rare coach. Then they went to another rare breed of coach, just an extraordinary coach. I mean, in all really, in any way you can think of, Tom was a great coach. And that's the part I never ever took for granted. That they just had two incredible coaches back to back, and that just explains a lot of that. Really does explain a lot of it.
Sip, can I make the argument that the coaches were bigger outliers than the program succeeding in the situation?
Not at the time. No, Sip, not at the time.
Yeah. We
took an OC and we took a guy that was at Wyoming that hadn't had success that long. I don't know about that.
What do you mean? I'm hung up here.
Outliers in what regard?
I mean that the job that they did was the outlier, not necessarily the situation.
Well, if you're going to make that case, then you're agreeing with me that Nebraska has outkicked its coverage.
No, I've been agreeing with the premise the whole time. It's just, when does it stop being an outlier and when does it start being the standard?
Okay,
that's my only question here.
That's a good one. I don't know how to answer that.
I'll give you Gonzaga, for example, right? 25 years ago, if you told me Gonzaga was going to win a national title, I never would have believed you, right? Nobody would have. But now if you say, Gonzaga's going to win a national title this year, then nobody would bat an eye. That's their outlier. The 99 Elite Eight was an outlier, right? With Dan Dickow and Dan Munson and whatever, right? But now...
Let me ask it this way, Sip, the way he's describing it. Does Nebraska need a specific kind of coach? Or is the job? That's the question, right? Like this is.
And I would agree with that.
This is the discussion we're having,
and I would agree.
Is the job set up for just anybody? Not just anybody, but is it the job versus the person for the job?
It's good. I think it's more about the person, and I don't know what the exact right person is. I mean, we saw it. But I'm not going to compare people to Osborne, and I can't do it to Devaney because I wasn't really around at that time. I just know what I hear, and Devaney and Osborne did have similarities. I mean, I'm not talking about personality, but there were similarities. I don't know what the specific kind of coach is. There are traits though that if I were an AD, I would look for sure. And one is the ability to handle a very fervent fan base, and to embrace that fan base. And also the ability to understand the scrutiny and the pressure, the daily pressure, 365, the 365 day a year pressure. And there's not all guys that are cut out for that. They're not. I've seen them here. I've seen a couple, 3, 2 for sure, that they weren't really cut out for that. I mean, that's just part of it. I mean, it's just a part of it. There's other things that are more important, but that one's important. And we happen to have a guy in here now in Matt Rule that fully embraces it and loves the fact that we care so much about the program and so much about what it does, and embraces the 365 day a year mentality. That would be a trait I'd be looking for. And I would hope that head coach understands it.
Sip, how much of I said Coach Rule seems to have this uncanny way of he doesn't leave much to speculation through the media, right? Where he can state and narrate his objectives, and so you don't get a lot of speculation and second guessing and criticism because of the way that he delivers the information.
He's a communicator. He's a grade A. And I've heard you talk to him and about him, Damon and Ravi. He's a grade A communicator. That's another trait that is important. He's a grade A leader. Again, these are no guarantees of anything, but these are striking parts of his personality and parts of his professional personality. He's an incredible communicator, Damon, and you're right. He covers so much ground and tells you so much that it doesn't leave much speculation. He'll answer your questions, and he'll give you more than what you ask. So it does help, and I think that part of him is really valuable. I do. We're lucky. I mean, I tell the guys that I work with, we're very lucky right now. Don't abuse it. Don't abuse it. Because we get pretty much all the information we need. Now, he's interesting because it comes from him. You're not, I've dealt with staff before where you're getting stuff from assistants sometimes, but no, this is Matt. This is Matt's deal, and that's the way he wants it. And I respect that part of it too.
We're talking with Steven Sipple from Husker Online. Sip, I guess I'm just I'm having a really hard time because I feel like it's not just a Nebraska thing, and maybe I'm too insulated in the state and whatever, but it seems like most programs need a certain, like Texas needs a certain type of head coach to succeed, right? Because we've seen lots of guys that we thought were decent coaches fail there. It's a different type than what Nebraska needs. But I could make the argument that a lot of schools needs a specific type of guy for their situation to be successful. Nebraska's situation is just different than those places.
I suppose. I mean, and you guys are good at this. It's sort of a complex discussion because, I mean, while I have specific traits in mind for a head coach at Nebraska, it doesn't mean that another kind of coach couldn't work here. I mean, I think Bill Callahan, with the right group of assistants, could have worked here.
Me too.
For a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think he had what was required, but I think the staff had shortcomings, obviously, and you probably know where I'm going. And Bill didn't fit that necessarily like he's not like Matt Rule. I mean, Bill wasn't as engaging. He wasn't as willing to put himself out there. He wasn't necessarily 365 days a year. I mean, he was as a worker, but not as far as putting himself out there, being engaging. But he could work. I mean, he could have worked here. I believe Bill Callahan, with the right staff, could have succeeded here at a high level. But so Ravi, yeah. I mean, I get where you're coming from. It's a hard discussion because it's extremely nuanced. Sometimes it's just a matter of this. Okay, wow, that's a fit. I don't even know exactly if I know why, I don't know if I can define it, but it just feels right. It's like a relationship with a significant other. Sometimes you don't even know why. You don't even want to think about it. It just works. And so, because if you overthink it, then it could start messing it up. But if it's the same with the coach in the school, I don't know, it just works. I don't know why it works.
So how much of it's not even pushing the envelope, but like saying, now we don't bat an eye at it, where he can come out, by coach rule, he can come out and say, hey, listen, this is what quarterbacks are going for in the portal, or hey, this is what we need, or hey, we'd like, 15 mil in the kitty, or you know what?
Yeah.
We didn't win a lot of games. What are you guys going to tell me about winning? Or he just has this way of saying things that he believes to be true. He puts it out there. How much of that is the skill set in terms of, like, he's going to make you tell him no or correct him, right? You have to be willing to do that. Otherwise, he's just going to lead, right? Like, I think that's a unique a skill set that I like.
Well, I think what we're talking about is transparency. He's really transparent. Like, what's on his mind. And it's interesting. The guys I work with are interesting in the way they approach it. They say you have to almost be disciplined as a journalist with Matt, because he gives you so much. You really have to go back and listen closely sometimes, because he talks very quickly, and he does throw in things quickly between what I'll call the germane topics. He'll throw in some things that you're like, okay, I need to know that too. And then he'll get back on track on what the main conversation was. So he's giving you a lot, but you got to be willing to listen to it too. I mean, I go back over my tapes all the time, and I'm always like, wow. I mean, he gave us a lot there. That's a lot. And he didn't even, he gave us what we asked, but then he gave us more too. But you got to go back. You got to be able to go back. You got to have the discipline to be able to go back and listen to everything, because he gives you a lot of information that you weren't even expecting.
Yes, you got to be careful. Otherwise, he'll just slip in a little like Rudyard Kipling, little couplet in there for you on a poem and not even realize it, which is what he did to us last week.
I'll give you an example. He's very, I'm trying to think. I talked to him on Saturday. He'll throw in things. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a good example. Like, I asked him about, are you surprised that, they only had 4 guys going to the portal, 2 scholarship players and 2 walk-ons. Yeah, he was surprised there were only that. First of all, it was interesting to me that he was surprised there were only 4 that went in. That alone was interesting. Then he took it a step further and said, he goes, I love walk-ons, but I don't even really count the walk-ons as guys that went in the portal, because it makes so much sense. A lot of them are trying to go get a scholarship somewhere. That I don't really count that against us. The walk-ons, they want to go get a scholarship. And I tell them, you can go look, and then you can come back. And I didn't, that's an example of more than I bargained for, but it was great information. It was a great window into the way he looked at this stuff. It was interesting to me that he thought there would be more. There would be maybe a few more guys that went into the portal from his team, and there were only 2. That he counted. There were 4, but he really was counting just Buckley and Borders. And then he goes further. He said, those are our guys. Those are Huskers through and through. They graduated. They're both graduates. They're alums. I mean, it's just good. It's a good window into the way the leader thinks about this stuff.
How about the leader, the lifelong learner part of it, where he said, I didn't appreciate or embrace numbers really like I got here until I got here, right? He quantified it. The numbers at Temple, the numbers at Baylor when he got there. Obviously, Carolina's got a restricted roster. Do we undersell, oversell, not talk enough about his ability to adapt and adjust to at this stage in his career? Because it would be easy with all these reformation projects that you've had success with, that you could not tinker with the process.
No, I know. I think we probably undersold a little bit. I think we've we've seen enough of him now and heard enough of him now that I think we're not surprised maybe that he's able to adjust. He just strikes me as a type that can adjust. I mean, I think he's in a position that he's in, as a head coach now at 4 different places, a head coach at 4 different places. Okay. That tells me a lot about him right there. Good. That he can get 4 different jobs. And it tells me that he can probably adjust to a lot of different things. We've seen it. He adjusted to losing a job. He adjusted to a hard time at Carolina. And he had to adjust. But those jobs that he had, Temple, Baylor, way different kind of jobs, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they're similar. You can find similarities with all jobs, but they're pretty different regions, different kind of conferences, a little bit probably different expectations in some ways, different kind of players you're dealing with in some cases. And now he's in a different world here too. But he does strike me, and I've listened to him really closely, and I've written a lot. I've written more about this head coach already than I've written about a couple of the other ones. It just strikes me as a guy that can adjust about anything. You see him; he's a very quick thinker, right? He's a very quick thinker. He sizes things up incredibly fast.
Yeah,
I mean,
quick blinker.
He can really size up a situation quickly. He can size up a person quickly. His mind's always working. You can tell. He's not slow to the stick at all. I mean, he's really interesting that way.
Are you already getting ready for, because we kind of have to get this right in our minds, right? Offense, defense, special teams. We know where each was last year. As we're watching this season potentially unfold, the narratives will be easy, right? Offense had way more margin to get better. So we'll look at it that way. Defense had a standard, so we'll be very nitpicky there. And, specialty, like a lot of how we'll frame the start of this season will depend on what our thoughts were going in. Are you balanced already right now with that, knowing that going in?
Pretty balanced. I don't think we're talking about special teams enough. They were so last year, and there's some concerns there right now. I mean, there's 2. I mean, the punter and the place kicker have been pretty inconsistent, I'd say. Albano found some consistency as the year went on last year, and then the spring game happened. You don't know really what to make of that. Buschini was just inconsistent. Now they got a new long snapper. That's something to watch really closely. That whole picture. But no, you're right, Damon. I think the narratives are pretty set going in, and they're pretty easy going in. The offense really can't get much worse. The quarterback play can't get much worse. If it does, then I don't know what we're going to be talking about. If it does, it would be an incredible development, but it won't. So I'm not worried about it. But I think we have a pretty good handle on everything, and part of the reason we have a really good handle on things is because the head coach is very transparent.
That's Stephen Maximilian Sipple from Husker Online. How do you like that one, Sip? Maximilian?
Yeah, not bad. It'd
be
odd. I mean, people would do a double take when I told them my middle name.
I just want to see the pause when they ask you how to spell it. You're going to be like, you have to be careful here.
Got to be careful. Sip, we appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's a good one. Thank you.
Thanks, Sip.
We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln, live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. I want to thank everybody that came out last week to donate goods to disaster relief here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We got a ton of stuff. We really appreciate it. Also, we're able to donate all the proceeds from Wednesday to local charities to help with disaster relief as well. So thank you so much, everybody that came out. We truly appreciate all the kindness and efforts that brought that together. DB and I have been arguing off the air pretty much about the same topic for 3 hours. And it's this, I don't actually think we're that far apart, but we view what's happening really differently, I think.
Yeah, I'm just telling you it's a very difficult job.
And I understand that, but I also understand it's probably not, I mean, in my mind, I'm just kind of doing, this is just blink test. It's not in the top third of hardest jobs in the country, Power 5.
But it's not, but again, see, those kinds of things, that's not really the discussion. It is or it isn't relative to what it is or isn't. It's not the problem. This whole problem is it's about what everybody else is doing. We just need to be good at what we're doing. Because I'm just telling you, it's like I'm not going to allow myself to get into, like, I know Kirk Ferentz is a great coach.
Yeah.
Is he specific to Iowa? We could have that.
I don't know.
We could have that back and forth all day.
He's great at Iowa.
I just know he's great at Iowa.
Yeah.
And it's the reason some other people have wanted him for other jobs,
Yeah.
right? So, or Minnesota, right? Minnesota's won a lot more games than Nebraska since Nebraska's been in the Big Ten, especially in the last handful of years. And it's like, I'm not going to tell you that Minnesota is a better job. I'm just telling you, PJ Fleck has done a better job than anybody else that's been at Nebraska. So at some point, you have to kind of take the coach rule approach. And it's really what we admire in him because we aren't really ready to say it out loud ourselves about what kind of job Nebraska. We're very reluctant to say this is a difficult job because of the affinity and how much we love this place. But that doesn't mean it's a ridiculously difficult job.
See, I think it's the opposite. I think people call it a hard job because they're afraid that if they say this is a job that you can win at, then if you don't.
Do you ever see us in polls or online or social media? Like, this is the greatest place to be ever. And I don't discount that. What I'm telling you is the fact remains, for whatever the reasons, we haven't won here at a very high level for it to be such a good job. So you either got to redefine or reassess what it takes to do well here. Because we're pulling our hair out having this back and forth conversation about, it's like we got into with the athletic director job. Like, oh man, being the athletic director at Nebraska should be a great job. Well, it should be. It just hasn't been.
Sure.
Right? So,
but is that a result of the job itself or the people that were hired to do the job that maybe weren't cut out for it?
Listen, though, they're kind of one and the same.
Are they?
Man, listen, is Duke a good job? Basketball?
Good basketball job, yes.
Okay, why? Because they got the right guy?
No, because they're committed to that program.
What they've been doing outside of Coach K?
That's, again, because he was there for a really long time and was really good for a really long time. He resets the standard of what that job is, in my mind.
Okay. It's
like, if it's to me, again, I used this example before, Gonzaga is a harder one to figure, right? Because they've been really good for 25 years. I don't know how good that job is outside of Mark Few. I really don't.
I just think I've just seen this, and we better kind of address it, because you gave the number the other day about what it could take to baseline crack the 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
You started with 9 wins.
That gets you in the conversation.
Yep. And do you know what? I could point to 4 different decades. 4, Ravi. The 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and 2000s, where 9 wasn't good enough.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. In each of those decades for multiple years. So it would be nice if we're going to get back into this frame of relevance where we better be appreciative real time for what it is. Because the whole reason I made this whole case, is because I'm telling you that the level in which he was hitting, multiple coaches hit double-digit wins, should be a statistical anomaly. We talk as though you just roll out of the rack and get to double digits, right? We're having this discussion as though it's like, oh man, how long before you do this before it becomes the norm? Winning 10 around here for that long, it's not even in the discussion. But unless you if you don't want to revisit history for what it is in the landscape of college football, you better start defining openly what success is relative to where we've been. And it doesn't mean you can't embrace it. It doesn't.
So let me ask you this.
But how do you start at 9 in 2012 in 2024 when we can't even get to 6 and 9 for so long, on so many different occasions hasn't been good enough.
I get that.
Okay,
I do.
that's the whole discussion.
But every single, and I get that at times 9 wasn't good enough. I get that.
At
We're 5
times,
and 7. We got to practice.
At a lot of times.
Why do you think he says that?
And I get that I can't jump.
Why do you think he says that?
I get
We're
that I
5 and
can't
7.
jump
We got to
from
practice.
I get that I can't jump from 5 to 9. What I am saying is
you can.
no. I'm saying there's a lot of steps between that.
And 9, like you better understand that's a difficult place to be.
That's
it
fine.
doesn't mean it can't happen though.
I will say every single coach from Devaney through Mike Riley had at least one 9-win season. The only one since Devaney got here to not get to 9 wins was Scott Frost. So while
Did Callahan got the 9?
he did, he had a 9-win year.
All right then, Bill.
Every single coach,
I was so bad during that stretch. I don't even remember what.
every single coach from Devaney through Mike Riley had a 9-win season. So I get it's a difficult job. I don't know that I think it's as difficult as other people do, but that's beside the point. But getting to 9 wins here, whether you're suited for this job or not, whether you're good at this job or not, has been something that's been doable for everybody. Literally everybody except for Scott Frost.
Is that what Tim Miles thinks, Shane, or what are we like?
Everybody?
Everybody.
Oh, Trev too. He went with Trev.
So
Everybody.
I have a hard time thinking that 9 wins is not within grasp.
That's not. Are you hearing anything?
I am hearing what you're saying.
Because that's not the point I'm trying to make.
We're going to be all right.
It's more for the educational historically what that line of thinking has meant to this program.
Sure.
And why we undersell the degree of difficulty. I'm going to say that again. It's more about what that number has meant historically in terms of what has been a cause for consternation relative to what we think this job is.
And that's fair. But historically, 9 wins didn't mean you were in the hunt for a national title. And now it's going to.
Maybe.
And I think that's where it gets different.
I didn't mind the data discussion last week about going back to, I think you went back to 2017.
I went back to 2013. I went 14. I went to the first year of the playoff.
Okay.
So
I don't mind that.
I think you're right. There's historically 9 wasn't good enough here. But when 9 puts you in the playoff or put you in the conversation
I hope you're
for
right,
the playoff,
because I think he's a really good coach. And
I do too.
That's.
I think the new playoff format restructures what success looks like.
And he's telling you.
Maybe I'm wrong.
He's telling you, like, he's saying 2 things at once. Be appreciative on the journey, right? Fall in love with the process, but it's not going to happen overnight. Because when we were winning 9, playing against K-State, Colorado, pre-Colorado 89, and Iowa State, nobody was like, ooh, you're winning 9.
Right.
So it's more like it's a historical conversation in not revisiting the past, but historical in terms of, if this is the number, understand the degree of difficulty.
And I mean, it probably would have been very similar with some of the Big Ten West schedules that if they would have won
Nebraska
9,
could double their win total, double to 9, I'd be like, woohoo.
Anthony Stabile coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln, live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, from the Pillar Exterior Stage. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Let's get to Pete on the Hurrdat hotline to talk about a little bit of QB play. Pete, what's going on, man?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. I guess in my opinion, I'm not looking at the wins and losses so much. I'm looking at the quarterback play and late fourth quarter defense. If we just had those improved, we would have probably been bowling the last 4 years.
It's interesting too, P, how those are uniquely connected, right? You hang on to the ball a little longer or get a few more first downs, you're probably a lot fresher defensively later on in games too. They're definitely intertwined.
Yeah, special teams for a while was really killing us too, and it's not that far off. We just need better quarterback play and better defense in the late fourth quarter, and we'd win a lot more games.
Yeah, Pete, I appreciate the call, Pete. There's a lot to that.
Pete, we appreciate the call there. Joining us now to recap a wild Kentucky Derby finish, our guy, Big A, Anthony Stabile, joining us again. Big A, what's going on, man?
Gentlemen, what's happening?
Did you recover? Because a lot of other people didn't. It was funny. Like they got all these screenshots in social media, people turning their television the right way to get the horse they wanted, and the angles of the photo finish. Man, is everybody good?
About a half a dozen people in Mohegan Sun fell over trying to get Sierra Leone to the wire. They did the lean. It's one of the oldest moves in the book. They did the lean. They couldn't get Sierra Leone up. It was amazing. I'm more of a screamer when I root. Have at that, boys. It was a Scottie Pippen alley-oop to Jordan just there. I'm more of a screamer, fellas.
Shane, just go ahead and cut that out.
And I like to snap with the. I like to snap with the right hand. I like to do the click. It's a racetrack thing where it's not quite a snap of a finger. It's very college very popular among college fraternities. But yeah, quite a few people do the lean, and there was an awful lot of leaning going on on the first Saturday in May. Listen, when you do what I do, right? You don't want to sound too hokey when it comes to this, but you want to see finishes like that in these races, the build up, the excitement. And you want to see close finishes, right? I mean, I got a lot of Rangers fans, a lot of Rangers friends that love the Rangers. We're a lot of fans. They win the first series 4-0. Well, last night 4-3. Little nail biter. You know what I mean? You got to come down to the wire a little bit. I like a sweat every now and then, but those are the kind of races you hope for. Exciting race. Yeah, I've recovered. I had to ride home from Mohegan Sun. I had to hear my stepfather complain about a few things, but it was fine.
Was that one of those with such tight odds in the middle of the pack, right? Could you see a lot of consternation and hand wringing with people trying to get the right combinations, knowing your margin for error was, how big it was, right? You could have made the case for a couple of 3-4 different horses as race time was getting close.
I didn't throw out 8 horses. I threw out the winner. Full disclosure. I didn't. I thought you could have made a legitimate case for 8 or 9 horses. I think I made a case for 8. There were 2 others. One of them was Forever Young, who I could see the case being made for. The winner was very tough to come up with, Mystical Dan, because of the fact that his best race by far in his career was on a muddy track. Now, if that result had happened on Friday, it would have made a lot more sense to me. But that track completely dried out. It basically did what I told you happened in 08.
Yep.
It's exactly how it played out. If the scenario plays out like 09 and that horse wins, absolutely. I might have called an audible if it's a wet track, because one of the more popular speed figures that handicappers use is called the Beyer speed figures. They're in the daily racing form, which is considered the Bible to a horse player. Only 2 horses in the field had earned triple-digit Beyer speed figures going into the Derby. Fierceness had 2, and Mystical Dan. But it came on a track that was more it was similar to the track on Friday for the Oaks than it was on Saturday for the Derby. So to me, he was a tough horse to come up with. I'll tell you what, the ride really made the rides made the difference in the race, because Brian Hernandez Jr., who's as underrated as it gets, his bread and butter is saving ground. And he saved all the ground. He made a real death-defying move on the far turn, putting that horse into a hole that really wasn't there. And he was able to nurse him through there and get him through there. And while Forever Young and Sierra Leone are in the 5 and 6 path. He's hugging all the ground and saving all the ground and hugging the rail, and it was the winning ride. It was really a fantastic ride, and not too many people have swept the Oaks and Derby in the same year, and both trainer Ken McPeak and jockey Brian Hernandez Jr. did just that this year.
How do you know if your horse can function trying to get in space, those tight quarters? You can't really practice it. It usually comes through racing. That's a lot of rigor to put a horse through and be guessing.
You can try to simulate it in the morning. More often than not, when these horses come up as 2-year-olds, they'll work by themselves, and then they'll start to work in teams. And then they'll start to sometimes train 3, 4, 5 at a time. The timed workouts, you rarely see more than 3 horses at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But as these horses get ready for the Derby, it's the trainer's job to try to simulate as many scenarios as they can. That's obviously an impossible one. But you'll take a horse. So let's use Fierceness, for example. Fierceness and Agate Road. Agate Road ran on the undercard in the basically the turf derby, the American turf. They are training partners. When Todd Fletcher sends them out in the morning, I would guarantee you that one morning Fierceness is on the inside and the other morning Agate Road is on the inside. And they'll go out and train together, and they'll learn to run inside of horses and outside of horses. Right? The horse's natural instinct is to run outside of horses. It's not really natural for a horse to run up inside of horses. The same way if you're driving a car, your natural instinct is to go around and not go to the right and not to the left.
Mm.
You'll pass to the left. So the natural instinct for a horse is to go around, not to the inside. So you train them in the morning as best you can. At the end of the day, it's an 1,100-pound animal with a 120-pound human being on top. If they want to make a right, they're going to make a right. If they want to make a left, they're going to make a left. That's how it works. You know what I mean? I'm 375 pounds. I've never been on top of a racehorse, and I would do anything. You ain't getting me on top of a racehorse. I've been behind them in the harness races.
Yeah.
I've driven media races in the harness races. And I can tell you right now, you got to have a half a screw loose to do that. But to climb on top of a thoroughbred, no, you guys, there's something. There's a fight. There's something missing in your fight. That's why they're the toughest athletes in the world, guys. They're the toughest athletes in the world. Hockey players are up there, rugby guys, but I'm telling you that jockeys have a 2 pounds helmet, a 1.5 pound flak jacket, and climb on top of one of the fastest animals in the world, going 45 miles an hour at top speed.
Did the 2:03:30 say more about the field or the pace that was set? Was that about in your neighborhood? I usually start with asking you over unders for finish times to help me dictate the race, but it hasn't been working.
I would have went. Not to red board. I don't red board.
Yeah.
I don't try to pat myself on the back too much. I would have been right in that wheelhouse. They're just not fast horses. Yeah. It's not a fast crop of horses. Mm. The best horses in the crop weren't. I don't think we saw them this week. Oh, I shouldn't say we didn't see them this weekend. I don't think we saw them in the Derby necessarily.
Mm. I just thought with a wide open where it had a chance to get out into the open, I would have maybe thought that time would come down some.
Say that one more time.
Well, with going in, if you're going to cap it, you're thinking, okay, this may have a lot of space and pace to it, where there could be some open track space. I thought the time may be a little lower.
I'm surprised. Well, you know what? If you thought that, you probably thought like I did. I thought they would go faster earlier. And they didn't.
That's what everybody kind of talked about, right? Was like,
I wonder how much of a function that was of the racetrack drying out. Because a lot of people think this horse, the winner, Mystical Dan, ran as well as he did because there was some lingering moisture in the track, and that can happen, right? The track goes too fast. Racetracks don't want to advertise wet tracks. That's just it's not good for business. People for some reason are turned off. If you see, so the gradings of tracks from worst to best is sloppy, muddy, good, fast. So a lot of people, a lot of racing executives feel like if they hang a sign up that says sloppy or muddy, maybe they won't handle as much money in the race. Maybe there won't be as much confidence in people betting their money. So I think that track was fast, but I would have a hard time arguing, as well as this horse ran, with his best figure coming on a wet track in the past, that there might not have been some residual moisture in that racetrack. With that said, it was not the fastest track you're ever going to see. 2:03 and 3 essentially, kind of a slow time. He got those speed figures I was telling you about.
Yeah.
He earned another 100. He got 101 on that wet track day a couple of races back. He got 100 on Saturday. I don't think you'll ever see one under 100, because I just don't think the race will ever. I don't think the figure makers have the chutzpah, for the lack of a better term, to give it less than 100. So I don't think they want breeding farmers mad at them.
Yeah.
So they assign it 100. But I mean, it was a slow race. I mean, I was looking for my sundial at the 3/8 ball, trying to get them horses time for the rest of the way home.
Big A, we appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks when it's Preakness time, and I'm sure we'll enjoy talking to you then as well. We appreciate it.
It's just 10 or 11 days. You guys can't get enough of me. I can't complain. I can't blame you.
That's how it is, man. It's that charm.
Anthony,
talk to you guys soon.
We'll talk to you soon. Thank you. That's the show for today. DB and I will be back tomorrow. It's Hurrdat Sports Radio.